So we're going to continue on in our study of the Age of Exploration, and today we're going to look at 6 key explorers and conquistadors. And really the goal of this one is just really quickly, what are the most important things about each of these guys? I don't want you to memorize every single little thing about them, but I do want you to have a pretty good idea of who each of them are. And so we'll start with, of course, Christopher Columbus, the Italian explorer who sailed for Spain, famous for intending to reach India to establish a new trade route, but instead he lands on San Salvador in the New World and eventually completes 4 voyages across the Atlantic Ocean in between 1492 and 1503. Here's what's important for you to know about our guy Columbus. He is Italian and sailed for Spain, and he intended to reach India, but instead he landed in the New World. That is Columbus, simply in a nutshell. 1492, all that good stuff. Maybe you remember a song or a rhyme from elementary school, but that's really all we want to know about Columbus, plus the Columbian Exchange, of course. Next we've got this guy, Prince Henry the Navigator, and he's kind of dressed as a sailor, and his nickname is the Navigator, but he, not necessarily an explorer, maybe more a navigator of logistics and finance rather than the seas. But he's regarded as the main initiator of the Age of Exploration, so he is actually pretty important. He's a central figure in the Portuguese Empire, and he sponsored numerous voyages with his wealth. So if you remember that Prince Henry is a legit prince, not necessarily a navigator of the seas himself, is more involved in actually organizing journeys rather than completing them himself, and he's from Portugal. That's your key information about Prince Henry the Navigator. Really important guy, just not really an explorer. Next we've got Vasco da Gama, who is legitimately a Portuguese explorer, and so we'll remember that about him. He commanded the first European ship to sail directly from Europe to India in 1498. What's kind of noteworthy about him is he sailed around the southern tip of Africa. So if Africa is, kind of shaped like this, what he did is he sailed from Europe up here all the way around and then over to India. So pretty noteworthy for this time. That's what he's famous for. He's Portuguese, and he went around Africa like so. Next up is Hernan Cortez. You might remember his name from when we talked about Mesoamerica a little bit ago. He is, of course, a Spanish conquistador. Conquistador meaning conqueror. So kind of the Spanish equivalent of these explorers, maybe a little bit more militarized than others. So he's, of course, Spanish, and he explored and conquered large parts of Mexico. He made alliances with indigenous groups. You'll remember this from when we talked about him defeating the Aztec Empire in 1519. Remember, the Aztecs were kind of aggressive with those around him, and so it made it really easy for a guy like Cortez to come in and make alliances with those groups around the Aztec, and then eventually defeats those Aztec people. Next, we've got his buddy Francisco Pizarro, here looking very angry. Another Spanish conquistador. He conquered the Incan Empire in 1533, so you really could get them easily confused. Remember, Cortez, he defeated the Aztec. Pizarro, he defeated the Inca. So know that that's the major difference between the two. He founds the city of Lima, Peru, and he brought back immense wealth of precious metals to Spain. So again, with Cortez and Pizarro, one is the conqueror of the Aztec, one of the Inca. So don't mix those two up. That's a pretty easy mistake there. And then finally, we've got Ferdinand Magellan, the coolest name on the list, another Portuguese explorer. And his crew led the first circumnavigation of the world. And circumnavigation is just a long, fancy word for they went all the way around the world. Really what Columbus was expecting to do, Magellan was the guy who actually did it. He didn't bump into the Caribbean like Columbus did. He actually got all the way around. He died in the Philippines, and he himself never quite made it all the way back to Europe, but his crew did, and so we kind of give Ferdinand Magellan the credit for getting all the way around the world, even though he kind of just came up a little bit short. So if you look at your most important box here, you've got names like Prince Henry the Navigator, Vasco da Gama, Hernan Cortez, Francisco Pizarro, Ferdinand Magellan, and then we've got one extra word here that I want you to kind of learn, and that's the Treaty of Tordesillas. And all this Treaty of Tordesillas is that as Spain and Portugal are exploring the quote-unquote New World and are claiming up territory, they realize that they're going after some of the same areas, and so they make what's called a line of demarcation, and basically they say, okay, any territory from here to here, that's ours, and any territory from here to here, that's yours. So they just kind of make an agreement that, we're both going to explore this new world, we're both going to claim territory, and here's kind of the dividing line between our side of the new world and your side of the new world. So I guess kind of a way to cooperate with each other, but also kind of ridiculous in that the new world didn't really belong to them because people had already been living there for thousands of years. But I guess us European folks still think that everything belongs to us.